manuscript submissions. All right, well.
Finding an agent, is that a code?
Well, yeah, finding an agent, and unfortunately, in today's market, finding an agent and finding an editor, one is no easier than the other. You really are in a position where an agent will say to you, well, you know, if you haven't published anything, I'm not sure I want to represent you. And an editor will say, well, unless you have an agent, I'm not really sure I want to publish anything that you have. Well, that creates problems. And this is why the age-old advice to aspiring writers has been try to publish something in the short fiction market. Because short fiction is never agented. It doesn't have to be. Nobody expects that. So if you can get some short fiction published in recognized markets, you can basically get yourself that publication record and then say, well, I haven't published any novels yet, but I have this from Realms of Fantasy, and this from Magazine of Science Fiction and Fantasy, and this from Orson Scott Card's Intergalactic Medicine Show, and wouldn't you like to publish my novel because it's going to be hugely successful? It puts you in a better place. When you're querying an agent, this is something we covered on Magical Words this past week, Edmund, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
it was pretty good actually. I liked the compare and contrast between the two different query letters.
Right. And
Actually,
again,
some things I liked better about the old one, but mostly the new one was better.
Again, for any of you who are interested in writing, if I have already pitched it, forgive me for pitching again, but the website, the blog site that I contribute to, magicalwords.net, magical words is one word, .net, is a terrific resource for aspiring writers. It's a group of us, all of us published, all of us veterans in the industry, giving advice on the craft and business of writing. And there is no cost to come and read it. There is no cost to register and leave comments. It's all free. It's just us putting up content. And Stephen is a regular reader and a regular commenter, and he'd tell you that it's a fairly valuable site.
Yeah, I would say so. I'd agree. It's there's always good stuff on there about the craft of writing and the business and the industry as well. So.
But the reason I bring it up is because we had a great post from Ed Schubert, who's the editor of Orson Scott Card's Intergalactic Medicine Show, about queries and about how you go about writing to an editor or an agent, in this case it was an agent, trying to sell your book or get them interested in reading your book. And that's usually the first step if you don't have an opportunity to meet agents or editors in person, is you send out query letters. And you do them as scattershot, basically. You send out 30 or 40 or 50, and you hope to get a couple of good responses. And a good response is an agent writing you back in response to the query, saying, yes, I would like to read your book. A query letter should be no more than 1 page long, single-spaced, usually with an extra line in between paragraphs, normal 1-inch margins all the way around, normal salutation and sign off and all of that. You generally want to give a very, very brief synopsis of what you're writing about. But more to the point, you want to do so in a way that shows that you know how to pitch it, that you know who your market is going to be, and that you have in mind ways in which a book might be sold. So for instance, I've been talking about my Thief Taker series this weekend quite a bit. It's a historical fantasy with a magical element and kind of a mystery element. And so my 10-second pitch for Thief Taker is, it's Harry Dresden, the Dresden File books by Jim Butcher. It's Harry Dresden meets Samuel Adams. Well, to the industry, Samuel Adams is, okay, so there's the historical angle, and they hear Harry Dresden and they think, cha-ching, which is what you want, because these are people who want to make money off of you. And so you want to show them that, yes, you can make money off of me, and yes, I've given thought to how you might make money off of me, because that's what they want to see. They don't want to see just talent. They want to see a certain level of business savvy as well. Yeah,
Those letters were paper letters.
paper
Is
letters.
that preferable to email?
Okay, well, in general, yes, I think they are. But here's the biggest thing you need to do. Every agency and every publishing venue that I can think of that is legitimate in today's market, be it a magazine or a book publisher, be it a literary agency, a big one, or even a small one that's just a one-person operation, every one of them has a website. And every one of those websites will have a section called submission guidelines.
Yeah.
And you want to go to the submission guidelines and check them out for each place where you're thinking of querying. Or each
Editors
place.
and Predators, is that
Editors and Predators is a site that was started by A.C. Crispin years ago. A.C. Crispin is a writer and a member of SFWA, the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Federation of America. And Predators and Editors is a site that is specifically designed to warn you about crooks, scam artists, charlatans, rapscallions, anybody who is looking to make money off of your ambitions who is not legitimate. So Editors and Predators is not somebody who you would query to, and it's not a place where you'd find information about how to go about doing this. Rather, it is a place to check when you start hearing back from editors or agents to make sure that they are legitimate. And especially if you get a response that doesn't meet the smell test. You get an agent saying, oh yeah, I'm very interested in your work. Usually I charge a $250 reading fee. And yeah, run like that. Or, yeah, I read your book and I think you've got an enormous promise. I really think, I think you can be a huge star. But I think your book needs a little tweaking. I happen to know of a book doctor. A book doctor for a small fee, $300, $400, will fix your manuscript for you. Anytime, the rule is money flows to the writer. That's how it works. Publishers pay you, agents get paid when you get paid. They take a cut of whatever money is coming to you, but the money flows to the writer. Anytime somebody is asking you to pay out of pocket for something, you need to take a good, hard look and make sure that it's legitimate. Having said that, there are people out there. Laura Ann Gilman comes to mind. Laura Ann is a fantastic writer. She is formerly one of the finest editors in the business. She was with Rock. She now runs her own editing business. And for a fee, she will help you brush up your manuscript. She is totally legit. There is nothing underhanded or scam-oriented about anything she's doing. But this is a case where you as an artist are saying, you know what, I can't get this right. I need a professional editor to take a look at this to help me get it to a point where I can sell it to a publishing house. That's the service that Laura provides. It's not in any way a sense of her saying, well, I can get you this if only you'll pay me this money, and then we'll sell your book. She is very upfront about what she does. And there are other writers out there and other editors out there who do professional editing at this level for that reason. I'm not saying they're crooks. What I'm saying is any agent who asks for money, there's something wrong there. Any agent who is shunting your work off to a book doctor or an editor of some sort, chances are that agent is getting a cut of whatever the book doctor makes. That's when the red flags should go up.
Yeah, so that list, a very long list on predators and editors is not complete as far as finding different houses or whatever. Because they have a lot of legitimate ones on there as well.
Do they list houses that are legitimate on there? It's been a while.
Well, they say, this, people have actually gotten money from this place,
Uh-huh.
for example.
Right.
It's a very long list, but and a lot of them are stay away and
Right.
it's half and half-ish.
And yeah, so anybody who they say is legit, it's legit. But what I'm saying is you need to go to the website of the actual agency
Right.
or the publishing house or the or the journal that publishes and check out their guidelines. Some of them
Pick
will.
up a book that you are interested in that's similar to yours and look at where it's published and go to that website and see what they're.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And yeah, I think I said that in one of the panels the other day, that one way to do this is if you feel like your work it's real similar to what, I don't know, somebody throw out a name. Any writer whose work you like and you feel that it's similar to theirs. One thing to do is read their acknowledgments. They'll tell you who their agent is. They'll tell you who their editor is. And if they don't, it's often with tour books, it's listed in the on the copyright page, who edited the book. That gives you a sense of, okay, well, if that's the market I'm aiming at, these are the people, these are the players in the market. These are the folks who might be able to help me out and who I might want to submit stuff to. But by the same token, that can be awfully limited. But you want to know your market. If you're writing military SF, you don't want to send it to Luna, which is the the fantasy line of Harlem. They're probably not going to be interested in your shoot 'em up military SF novel. By the same token, if you're writing paranormal romance, they might not be your first choice because that's not what they do really well. So you want to match your talents and your sense of where you fit into the market with the folks who are doing that kind of work. If you're writing epic fantasy, you should be looking at Tor, you should be looking at Rock, you should be looking at Dawn. You know, knowing the market is a very valuable thing for a writer. And the same way, knowing the market is a good way to figure out which agents. If you're writing in our genre, then you want to look at Donald Moss Agency. You want to look at Spectrum Literary Agency. Lucienne Diver used to be with Spectrum. She's my agent. She's now with the Night Agency, which is right here in the Atlanta area. So the Night Agency, which used to be largely romance and mystery, now has a very, very strong voice for fantasy and science fiction in Lucienne. So that's a data point for you to keep in mind. And then you go to the Night Agency site, and you see that unlike Donald Moss, they want your submission to be, and I'm making this up, so don't write it down as gospel, but they want it to be 5 chapters instead of 3, and they want a synopsis, whereas Donald Moss doesn't want a synopsis, or something like that. You need to check it for each one because everyone's going to be different. The biggest thing to remember, and this is a harsh reality for aspiring writers, the biggest thing to remember is that when you send your manuscript to somebody, they are not looking for reasons to love it.
Yeah.
They are looking for reasons to hate it. They have a pile this high of manuscripts that came in this week that they need to get through before Friday, because on Monday they're going to get another pile this high. And so they're going to be looking at your manuscript, and they're not looking for reasons to want to buy it. They're looking for reasons to say, oh, next. And so your goal has to be, first, to make sure that you get all those guideline things right. You want it to look just the way it's supposed to look. You want it to be professional. Don't put an acetate cover on it because you think it looks good. Don't staple it together. Staples down the side. Don't, for God's sakes, write it in crayon, which, believe me, has been done. Don't perfume it. Don't print it on pink paper. Don't do any of the things that you might believe will make it stand out. You don't want it to stand out in that way. You want it to look professional. White, nice bonded paper, normal font, readable, good margins. The top line of everything you write should have the title in a header. The title and then your last name. The title, if it's a short story, small cap and quotation marks. If it's a novel, all caps. All right. So, and it doesn't even have to be the whole title. For say, The Sorcerer's Plague. I guess I just did Sorcerer's Plague. I didn't have the article there at the beginning. Trying to think of for a long title. You know, you can abbreviate it, but that's how they know what they're reading. And then you have page number on the other side, top right corner. That's how you want it to look. I always submit everything in Courier New, 11 pitch, because it just looks right to me. But that's one of those things, if you prefer New Times Roman, it's fine, as long as it's a readable font. But little things like that, if you're sending it in a font that's too hard on their eyes, that's an excuse for them to throw it away. Typos. Your first 5 pages have to be typo-free. If you send them, if they want 3 chapters, and the 3 chapters comes out to 40 pages, and there's a typo on page 38, you're fine. Because if they've read all the way to page 38, you're ahead of the game. You're doing great. But if you've got a typo in the first 5 pages, you've got 3 typos in the first page, you're just flat screwed. It's just, they're not gonna like it. The point that I'm trying to make is, you want to do everything right on their terms, so that when they have to decide whether they like or dislike your manuscript, they're making that decision on your terms. And that means they're doing it based on the writing, the characters, the plotting, all those things that you have poured your heart and soul into. If they reject it on your terms, so be it. Doesn't mean your manuscript is a failure, it doesn't mean that you suck. It just means that on that particular day, for that particular house, for that particular editor, that particular story didn't work. One of the things that I've been writing about in the last couple of weeks is viewing the submission, rejection, resubmission process not as a verdict, but as a negotiation. Your work is a work in progress. And every time you submit something, you are getting feedback on it. If it's rejected again and again and again, it doesn't mean that you have failed. It means that right now the piece isn't working, and you need to figure out why it's not working and try again. All right? You hear stories all the time. How many times was J.K. Rowling's manuscript for The Philosopher's Stone kicked out the door? I know it was at least 2 dozen.
Don't remember the specific.
She did okay. You know? Rejection is okay. It just means that you're still dealing with a work in progress.
Okay, so they all say, don't submit this to me if you've already submitted it to somebody else. And you're only supposed to submit it one place at a time?
Yeah,
It's taken me a year to get back to you.
Yeah, to me, pardon the language, that's a crock of shit. All right? If they want to say to you, I will give you a verdict on your manuscript within 3 weeks, then they are free to ask for an exclusive. But if they're gonna sit on your manuscript, as all of these places do, for months at a time, then by the time you go through them, I mean, you know, everybody gets rejections. Everybody does. I still get rejected all the time. And if I had to wait, if I had to do serial submissions on everything, I'd be 70 years old before I publish my next story. Now, I understand that they tell you that only to do that. That's the one GL that I would ignore. Don't flaunt it. Don't tell them, well, screw you, I'm not
Well, they don't have any way of knowing because everybody else has a stack this high too.
Right.
Did you get one from this person? I have no idea.
Yeah. So, you know, but, well, you know, everybody does talk to each other. So there is, what I'm saying is not without risk. There is the danger that you're going to have some editors say to her buddy over, you know, beers one night, oh yeah, I just got this fantastic manuscript. I was reading it all day long. It's by Stephen Watkins. I've never heard of the guy before, but God, it's good. And her friend goes, that bastard sent it to me too. You know, that could happen. The chances are pretty slim, but it could happen, all right? But I really think that when agencies and editors ask for exclusive these days from aspiring writers, unless they have the intention of reading the thing in a prompt way, they have no right to ask for an exclusive. I think it is totally unfair. But that's just me. So I would tell you that's the one I would tell you to ignore.
Okay.
But don't come back and sue me when you get in trouble.
We'll never know. That was the reason, right?
Right. Yeah. Other questions?
I've been wondering about, I guess platform building is kind of the term that's used a lot these days. You know, I mean, I keep a blog. I've got probably a half dozen people that actually comment on it regularly, and maybe a dozen more than that, that people that tell me they read my blog from time to time.
Uh-huh.
You know, but that's not really a platform. I mean, yeah, that's, if I could count all the people that read me on my fingers and toes, that's.
right.
You're
So-
not exactly famous.
Exactly. So what are some of the things that you can do to sort of build a platform? Or,
This is going to sound incredibly glib, and I apologize for that. Write the best book you can. When it comes right down to it, the best sales tool still in publishing is word of mouth. Now it happens that word of mouth is you know, it's gone worldwide, it's gone viral, but it's still word of mouth. Until you've got something that's on the verge of being published, be it self-pubbed or e-pubbed or whatever, having a platform doesn't do you much good. The best platform I have is Magical Words, because that by far has the best readership, the highest readership numbers. My blog and my website and my Facebook page and all of that stuff, I have 1,200 Facebook friends or something like that, and I'm intimately familiar with all of them. But Magical Words, we get 80,000 hits to 100,000 hits a week. Now some of them are bot hits, but we're getting hits. That's a platform, and I got it in. It became my platform when Faith and I and Misty started the site in 2008. I had been writing for 11 years at that point. But also, I have to say that the other thing is that at Magical Words, one of our writers, Misty Massey, her husband Todd is our webmaster. And Todd has told me for a while now that Faith and I are the ones who funnel the most traffic to the site. And so I must be getting some traffic at my blogs and my website because it's showing up when I say, oh, I've got a post up today at Magical Words. So it's doing some good. But again, it took years to build. And it only started building after I was published. After I could say, hey, look at me, and also look at this. Right now, everybody in the world is saying, hey, look at me. But not everybody in the world has the, oh, and look at this thing yet, right? So the best thing you can do to create a platform for yourself is to create content which you will then advertise on that platform. Because the platform in and of itself is nothing unless there is something beyond the platform. Does that make sense?
yeah. It exists to sell, and if you don't have something to sell, then it doesn't really exist.
That said, there are exceptions to this. John Scalzi started Platform and went to novels. Cory Doctorow started Platform and went to novels. They are notable in just the same way that Chris Paolini is notable because he started self-pubbed. It's not necessarily the way you want to start. Yeah, there are people who did hugely well starting that way, but it's backwards in terms of what usually happens.
No generality is true, including what I just said.
Exactly. Other questions? I like your platypus shirt. Ah, come on, people. Anything at all, except how much do you make each year?
On that subject. So that's actually something.
More than I deserve, less than I would like.
Yeah, that's something that I've been thinking a lot about too. Like, in 2 weeks I'll have an MBA. Basically, I've already done all the work, and it's just getting a piece of paper at this point.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So I can make a lot more money from everything that I've read, doing whatever it is I'm going to do with my MBA, than I would ever be able to make unless I became a J.K. Rowling or a Robert Jordan or whatever, which isn't going to happen, or statistically.
Statistically, it's not going to happen. It could happen,
Yeah.
but statistically, it's not going to happen.
So, I guess that's a question I wonder about is how do you knowing that you're not going to make that much money, you may not even be able to make enough to make a living. It'll be nice spending cash or whatever. How do you manage your career, including your, not fantasy writer career, to make that all happen? Like, that's something I'm trying to figure out for myself right now.
That's one of those, it's totally individual. It varies from person to person. The best advice I can give you, which is the advice I followed, was marry well. Seriously, when I was starting out, we didn't have kids yet, but my wife basically said to me, she said, you've been writing now for, did any of you hear the story I told about how I got started? I was an academic. I applied for academic jobs and I started writing the same year. I wrote during the summer, and I basically got a job offer to be a history professor and got a call from Tor Books about Children of Amaranth, my first book, within 24 hours of each other. And I had a weekend to decide what I was going to do. And this after my wife had said to me, you've just finished your PhD, you have nothing to do for 5 months until the academic jobs open up. You've been talking about writing since I met you. Why not write? Spend the summer writing, see what happens. When the offer came in, my wife said, look, I knew you before you wrote. And I know you now. And I like you a lot better now. She said, you're happy, you're doing what you're meant to do, obviously. Keep writing. We don't have kids. We don't have a big mortgage. We can do this on my salary. Let's give it 5 years, and we'll see what happens. As I said, I married you really well.
So you never worked a day in your life?
Oh, that's not true.
Oh.
I have a
Think
PhD.
writing is
Did
important?
I mention I have a PhD? Did I mention I have 12 books in print? I've worked. Did I mention I have a teenager? But we said we'll give it 5 years. And in the 5th year, my income went from X, which was pretty tiny, to 5 times X. I reached that level where it suddenly jumped. And we were off to the races. And after that, I didn't have to worry anymore. But still, 5 times X is not terrific money. It's better than I was making. It allows me to contribute materially to the marriage and to the family life. But my wife, in the highly lucrative field of college professorship, my wife out-earns me, and more to the point, she has benefits. She has a health plan, she has retirement, all of that.
But her attitude was the main thing.
Her attitude was the main thing. And it was basically, we're both happier because you're right. And eventually you're going to be successful because I've read your stuff and I know that. Keep doing what you do. The answer to your question is you need to gauge what you need, what requirements your family life has, where you want to be in 10 years, and whether it's realistic to think you're going to get there. I think every writer should have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and a 20-year plan when they start out. That said, I'm at the 15-year mark, basically. And I thought I would be making more by now. I was hoping, it was a hopeful thought, but I thought I would be making, maybe not Brandon Sanderson money, but Joe Haldeman money, or Guy Gavriel Kay money. I thought I'd be doing pretty well, and I'm making less than I thought. On the other hand, I love what I do for a living. And that's priceless. I am home when my kids get home from school. I'm home when my kids are homesick from school. I was there to take care of my children when they were infants. You can't put a price on that. And I think I'll probably end up, living to be a healthy old man because I like what I do and I'm happy. And there's no price you can put on that. So you need to balance these things out and figure out what's most important to you. But if you think you're going to get rich doing this, or your 5-year plan includes writing a bestseller and making $5 million a year, that's not a realistic plan. If your plan is, I want to sell 3 short stories next year, and 5 short stories the year after that, and sell my first novel the year after that, that's a realistic plan. And being able to say, I want to be earning royalties on 5 books 10 years out from now. I want to have 3 new books under contract 10 years from now. That's a realistic plan.
It's like one author who's blind, been reading who does that. Jim C. Hines, he's got
Jim,
a day job,
Uh-huh.
and he goes in every day, and he still manages to. I mean, I guess it's about a book a year he's putting out, but
A book a year is good.
yeah. So, I wonder, like, how could I balance? Is that something I could successfully do with the kind of career that I'm looking at?
Right. I'm at the point now, this year, calendar year, January 1st to December 31st. I'm ahead of schedule right now, but my plan for the year is I will have finished the second Thief Taker book. I will have written the Middle Reader book. I will have written a contemporary urban fantasy. I will have revised a second contemporary urban fantasy that's already fully written but needs a fairly hefty rewrite. And I will have written a proposal for 2 more Thief Taker books, plus a couple of short stories on the side. Because I work full time, I can make goals like that for myself in terms of my writing time and know that I have a fairly realistic chance of making them. Now, I'm writing much faster now than I was 5, 10, 15 years ago. But that's a realistic business plan for the year for me. Jim can't do that, not because he's not capable of it, but because he has the day job. And I think he also has a family.
Yeah, he's got kids.
Yeah, so, there's no way. When my kids leave for college, when both of them are gone, I can add another book to that mix, because I'll be able to get that much more done, But, so you have to be realistic about what you're demanding of yourself, because the most discouraging thing for a writer is to set what you think are realistic goals and then immediately start not making them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna write 2,000 words a day, every day, for 6 weeks, and I'm gonna write, the first half of my novel. And then, the first 5 days out, you find, well, okay, I'm writing 1,200 words a day, and I'm already 4,000 words behind my schedule. That's no way to start. If you need to adjust your goals upward because you're meeting them all, that's great. Don't set goals for yourself that you're immediately going to have to downward revise, because it can be dispiriting. And this profession is dispiriting enough without kicking yourself in the rear.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
I've heard that out of 300 million people in the United States, there are 400 making a living writing novels.
I believe that.
Uh-huh.
I believe that. I wouldn't qualify myself as one of them. I'm not making a living writing novels, but I'm in the subset right below that. I'm one of the 1,200 who are making some money,
Yeah.
a decent money writing. But yeah, it's a tiny, tiny percentage. And part of the problem is those 300 million Americans, the reading public is really only about 10 or 15 million. The percentage of people in this country that actively reads fiction is tiny. So we're already, it's depressing. It's remarkable to think about the emptiness of the lives of those who aren't reading novels.
Yes.
More souls.
You'd think they would revolt and start reading.
Seriously, what are people thinking? We're not. So yeah, but I mean that sounds right to me.
I have 3 grown-up children and they all read.
Good. Well, you did something right.
Yes.
Yeah.
You were talking about a group of people that you give your books to preview.
Beta readers.
Beta
Yes.
readers.
Beta readers.
Different little things like that can.
Beta readers are folks who, okay, you want them to be people who love you so much that they don't care about your happiness. That sounds oxymoronic, but I think you know what I mean. They are people who understand that what you're giving them is not something you want them to coo over, but rather something that you want them to criticize. So you have to.
Why are you from being a beta reader if you don't tell me that anything wrong with my book? Right.
Yeah, AJ on Magical Words came up with a terrific system. He didn't want his beta readers ignoring things, and so what he did was he wanted them to use a letter grade system and to have to put a letter grade on each page, except the letter grades, instead of, it was A, B, and C, but it wasn't, you know, A is great, B is good, C is mediocre. It was, I don't remember now. But basically, he gave them a system where on every page they needed to point to one thing that they really liked, one thing that they really hated, and one thing that confused them. And he wound up, I'm not sure they did it on every page, but it was enormously helpful for him because he was able to get people to flag things that were working, that weren't working, and that needed clarification. And so C was confused, B was bad, and I don't remember what A was. Yeah, it's something, but, so he had this letter system. But the point is, you want your beta readers to be honest with you and to give you feedback. You want them to do it in a fairly timely way. And you want them, ideally, to be your target audience. I have my middle reader book out with some beta readers right now. Not one of them is older than 12 years old, because that's who the books are for. So I went to some friends and I said, I have this middle reader book. Would you mind letting Andrew and Kate read it? Would you mind letting Sam and Aiden read it? Would you mind letting Joshua and Rachel read it? And they were, the kids, one of them I dropped off the manuscript and the only one home was Aiden, who's this adorable 9-year-old ginger-haired boy. And he's a voracious reader. And I said, this is for you. This is my newest book. I'd really like you to read it. Tell me what you think. And you would have thought that I had just given him a lollipop the size of Michigan. His eyes lit up. He was like, okay. And his mom told me that she came home late from work that evening and found him in what she called a reading coma on the couch. He had been reading it all night. He was about halfway through the manuscript. He was like sprawled. He wasn't quite asleep, but he wasn't exactly awake either. But, a beta reader is an invaluable thing. Even if you only have one, it's an invaluable thing.
So where do you get them?
Where do you get beta readers?
Yeah.
You've got to get somebody who doesn't.
You have to find, again, it depends on who you're pitching it to. Are you married?
Yes.
Would your wife read your stuff and be honest with you in her appraisal of it?
Probably, but she might sugarcoat it more than would be helpful.
Do you have a brother?
No.
Or a sister? Or
I have 3 sisters.
would they?
Well, yes, they all make fans.
They would be painfully honest.
Yeah, and they, I was about to say, they probably relish the opportunity to hurt your feelings.
Maybe that's a bummer, dude.
That is probably true.
You need someone who reads in the genre. You need someone who you trust to be, you trust to be honest without being cruel. Yeah, that's the better way to put it than when I say, someone who loves you so much they don't mind you being unhappy.
Stabbing your heart out.
Really, it's someone who you think will be honest enough with you without being mean about it, and whose judgment you trust. And so a friend, if you're in a writing group, a fellow writer, if there's a colleague at work who you respect but maybe don't know that well, but you find them in your personal life. That's where you find them. I have never been part of a successful writing group. I've been in a couple of unsuccessful ones, but I've never been in a successful one. And when I say a successful one, I mean a writing group where the people in it are all fairly equal in their ability and where they are in their careers. So I was in a writer's group at one point, and there were a couple of good writers in it, but I was the only one who was published. And so they put their stuff in and I critique it. I put my stuff in and they coo. And I didn't want cooing. I knew it was imperfect. I knew it was a flawed piece. I needed them to, but they were intimidated by the fact that I'd been published, and so they didn't want to criticize me.
So anybody who has ever been in a bookstore and overheard one of those is scared to death of them. It's just like, okay, here's my heart, here's your knives, go ahead.
Right. But yeah, so a writer's group can be a good a good resource as well, because then you get to workshop your stuff, and that can be enormously helpful. You need to have rules. If you try to start your own writing, you need to have rules. You find a few people who you trust and say, here's how we do it. I was part of a writer's workshop up in Calgary, Canada, in October. I was guest of honor at conversion up there. Part of being guest of honor is you workshop with the writers group there. You lead the workshop. It's a great experience. Really enjoyed it. But their rule is the person whose piece is being workshopped is not allowed to speak. Everybody goes around the table and they have 5 minutes to say what they like, what they dislike, and where they think, where they think the piece needs the most work and stuff. And at the end, the workshopped person gets to respond. But during the course of the critique, they are not allowed to speak at all unless answering a specific question. These rules, for some people that rule wouldn't work at all. But for this group, it was invaluable because it kept them from degenerating into name calling and fights and stuff like that. You had to sit there and take it.
Do you live here?
Yeah, I jotted down your email actually. Mentioned the
Right.
Right. Here.
And whether you join my group or not, I coordinate the novel critique group for the Village Writers Group that is based in Decatur.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you join the group or not, I can email you our guidelines, and it's which are not perfect, not the model that everybody should use, but it works for this group.
Yeah.
And something like it may
So do you allow
work for
people to watch?
another group.
Throughout
Do you
people to
allow
watch.
people to watch?
Yeah,
Group?
yeah. You can. We meet on the first and third Thursday of the month at Touchart Tea House, which is just off 285 on Shanley-Tucker Road. I have to.
Yeah.
All these hyphenated roads like Ashford Dunwoody sound alike to me, so I have to really stop and think before I name one of them. And at 7:30 p.m. Now, this coming Thursday, we're meeting at the members' house. But if
Do
you
you
want,
have like a Facebook page or anything online presence?
the Village Writers Group itself has a website, but it doesn't tell where the critique group meets. But I can give you my email, and it's my whole entire name run together. Anthony Gerald Miller. Gerald is Gerald @gmail.com. And I'll email you back my standard introduction.
See, my
And you're
husband's
welcome
the
to-
writer and he's so sensitive that he can't even come to these.
Oh. Well, if he doesn't come, we can't help him.
Right, thank you.
Well put.
Yeah, because we do work face to face around the table.
But he has had a couple beta readers and he's got some good
Yeah.
feedback from.
Well, that can work too. I sent my first novel, which is still unpublished and needs a lot of revision. Probably needs to be chopped into 2 novels. I sent it out chapter by chapter as I was writing the first draft to about 12 people, and 3 of them consistently wrote back helpful comments. And one of them was my sister, my only sister, who, after she had read the whole thing, said, "I found myself getting caught up in the story, so you must have done something right." And I thought that was not
That was an
bad.
accident, huh?
Yeah, that's a good going. Other questions?
You said if you're not able to meet agents face to face, what would be a vehicle for that?
What would be a vehicle for meeting agents face to face? Conventions, DragonCon here in Atlanta, agents attend that. Writers' workshops, I'm teaching at the South Carolina Writers Workshop in October in Myrtle Beach. And
So
there will be,
agents go to that,
oh yeah,
and then the writers submit their, did they submit something, the writers, or they just go and take classes?
they submit work for critique, although they don't have to, and they attend for workshops and stuff like that. But the best way but just attending the con, you get access to the people who are there as professionals, as instructors, and so you get to meet the agents there. And the agents are there to run panels and critique, but also knowing that they are there to make themselves available to writers.
Okay, where are they at DragonCon, for example?
That I don't know.
There's a whole writer's track.
There's a writer's track
That's
at
the
DragonCon,
writer's track.
yes.
Okay, all right, so that's basically what it is at a con,
Yeah,
is
there's
that
a
you
workshop.
need to attend the writer's track.
Yeah.
Right,
But that really is, and I mean, attending World Fantasy Convention or WorldCon, that's really the best way to put yourself in a position to network. Because what you're doing then is you're bypassing that catch-22 I was talking about before with you need an agent to get an editor, but you need to publish to get an agent. And you're also bypassing the slush pile, which is almost a thing of the past at this point. You guys know what the slush pile is, right? It's just unsolicited
Yeah.
manuscripts coming in and
Over the
some
transom, they used to say.
Yes, over the transom, that's right.
but,
But
What
what
do you
you're
mean?
doing is you meet people, and maybe whether you meet them at the bar or after, if they're on a panel, if say you're interested in meeting Lucienne Diver, my agent, and she's doing a panel at DragonCon, which she's not in the but I'm just giving you for instance. After the panel, you go up to her and say, "Hi, I really enjoyed your remarks on the panel. I have read several of your authors, Rachel Kane and Lynn Flelling, and the articulate and charming David B. Coe. And I really think that I'm an aspiring writer. I would love to talk to you a little bit about the business." And maybe she'll have time, or maybe she'll say, "Well, I'm kind of busy right now, why don't you email me?" Well, at this point, you've established personal contact with her.
I mean,
And at some point, then you are able to say when you submit, "Hi, here's where we met, and under what circumstances, at your suggestion, I am sending you the first 3 chapters of my novel." Make sure that they actually suggested that. But, because at some point they'll say, "Well, yeah, I'm interested in seeing it, why don't you send me what you've got?" And there you go, you're off to the races. You guys know how the payment system works in publishing?
Approximately, the publisher pays you through the agent.
Right.
The agent takes their percentage.
It's
And
usually 15%.
and you get an advance, and then you don't get anything more until the sales have paid off your advance.
Right. The sales are based upon royalties. So for a hardcover book, royalty schedule is usually 10, 12 and a half, 15, which means the first 5,000 hardbacks, you get 10% of the cover price. The next 5,000, you get 12.5% of the cover price. All sales after that, you get 15% of the cover price. Paperbacks, mass market paperbacks, the little ones, it's usually 8 and 10, sometimes it's 6 and 8, depends upon who you're working with. So 6% of the first 100,000 sales, and then 8% after that. As I say, sometimes it's 8% and then 10%. And then trade paperback sales. Trade papers are the slightly bigger paperbacks. They tend to be 6, 7.5, 9, I believe. So, for instance, if I sell a copy of Rules of Ascension in mass market paperback, I get 8% of the $8 that you spend on it. I get 64 cents. Oh, no, I don't, because I have to give 15% to Lucienne. So I don't get 64 cents from that $8 sale. I get, about 55 cents on every book. And as you say, until I earn out my royalty, if my advance was, and this is totally just grabbing a number, $10,000 per book, I have to earn out that $10,000 before. Now, I'm earning it out, plus my agent is earning it out as well. So I'm earning out 8,500 of it, she's earning out 1,500 of it. So it's not as though I have to earn out and then her also earn out the money I pay her. We share that. The other thing you should know is that royalty periods are for the first half of the year and the second half of the year. I'm about to get a royalty statement from Tor. I'll get it on May 1st, about May 5th maybe. That royalty statement covers, that I'm getting on May 5th, 2011, covers sales from July 1st to December 31st, 2010. So there's a 5-month lag from the end of the royalty period before I see even a statement. There's also a thing called reserves against returns. All books these days, this is fairly new in the history of publishing, this is development in the last 30, 40 years. Books can all be returned. Hardbacks are sent back to the warehouse, paperbacks are stripped and they send back the cover because paperbacks are considered disposable. So with mass markets are actually returned. But trade papers are actually returned. Mass markets, the little ones, they tear off the cover, throw the book away, send the cover back to the publisher and say, reimburse us for the wholesale price of this. So because of that, when I get my royalty statement on a new book, they say, you earned, on that book we gave you $10,000 for, you earned $12,000. Congratulations, that's terrific. We give you the money, that $2,000 that we owe you, but we're holding a reserve against returns because we don't know how many are going to come back from the bookstore. So instead of you getting $12,000, the 10 minus the 2 that we're going to send you now, we're actually keeping $8,000. So actually you've only earned out $4,000 of your $10,000 advance, and we're going to hold the 8 until the next time around. The next time around, we'll release half of the 2/3 that we took this time. And then the time after that, we'll give you half of the half that we kept from the 2/3. And this can go on for 4 or 5, usually it's 4 royalty statements they'll hold reserves. And then so that you can, so it's 2 years. So you can conceivably not get paid anything above your advance for 2.5 years after you've turned in a book. And this is important because chances are if you sell your first book to a publisher, you'll get a $9,000 advance. That $9,000 will be divided, actually the average, I should be more realistic. The average advance on the first book right now is $7,500. Usually it's divided up 3 ways. You get $2,500 on signing the contract, minus 15%. You get $2,500 upon turning in the manuscript, what's called Dena, delivery and acceptance. Delivery means you give it to them, acceptance means they say, yes, this is not written in crayon, it has complete sentences, it has punctuation, we will pay you for it. $2,500 for that, minus 15%. And then $2,500 on publication, minus 15%. The time lapse, and this is a generous calendar, if I sign a contract on a book on January 1st, 2011, chances are I'll get my DNA when I turn in the book. Maybe, there's always a delay, they're really slow. Maybe I'll get it in September. So I've got 2 payments in that year. But then the book isn't going to be released quite possibly for 1.5 years after I've turned it in. So I probably won't get that last $2,500 for, from January to when I turned it in to when it's published. That's probably a 2.5-year spread. So basically, what you can count on, because nothing ever happens on January 1st, is that you're going to be paid $2,500 a year, minus 15%, for 3 years. And then you'll wait 2.5 years, and then you'll start seeing some royalty. This is not a good way to make a living. All right? There are exceptions. Some people sell their first novel and they get $25,000 for it. But still, even that's $25,000 divided probably over 3 years. So that's $8,000 a year. So $25,000, that's an enormous advance. That's terrific money. But it comes out to $8,000 or $9,000 a year in the first 3 years of your career.
So the book would have to go viral immediately for you to get another check before the 2 years?
Yeah, you'd have to earn so much that even the reserve against returns didn't keep you from getting money.
Yeah.
Although, reserves against returns, renew themselves with each new printing. So if they printed 10,000 copies, you'll get reserves against returns on that. But then when they go back to press because you've written a blockbuster and it's gone viral, that second 10,000 printing, well, they're going to have reserves against returns on that. They're going to start fresh with the printing of that.
So they're just gonna let that one ride?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
like a poker game.
yeah. Anyway, and that said, I love what I do for a living. I can't imagine doing anything else. But make sure you love it, because the other rewards are.
But the further you go, so you have how many irons in the fire now that are?
Well, I have a dozen books that I've published, and so I'm getting royalties on. I mean, at this point, I'm not earning royalties on the first series anymore, but I'm still getting some royalty money on the Forlands books, and I'm still in the process of earning out the Southlands books. When I wrote the Robin Hood novelization, I wrote the novelization for the Ridley Scott Russell Crowe Robin Hood that came out last year. And I get a very small royalty on that, but we sold a buttload of copies of it. So I'm going to start getting money on that, although I should have gotten money last time, but the reserves against returns were so high that I didn't get any. They owed me probably close to 10 grand. But then with the reserves against returns, it got shunted back and I still owed them money. It's really an amazing business. You look at it and you say, thought that this was a good business model. Who came up with this idea for a business model? And a little voice in the back of your head says, well, it wasn't the writers.
Yeah, I'm like.
We can narrow it down on that one.
So,
yeah.
E-commerce, didn't everybody have high hopes that would equal the playing field a little between?
Yeah, and there's a chance that it will. I mean, there are folks out there, the Amanda Hawkins and the what's his name?
Conrad and Eisler?
The Eisler, yeah. Who are making a go of it, self-publishing on the internet. They're established. I mean, Amanda wasn't even an established writer, and she started doing it. She claims to be making 40 grand a month, right?
That's one data point.
Yes, it's one data point, and B, it's an unconfirmed data point, because Amazon doesn't release her numbers, doesn't release any of their numbers publicly. So it's all self-reported, and you have to understand that she's self-reporting this income while she is not even the #1 bestseller on Amazon. And she's claiming that basically she's making J.K. Rowling type money. And I'm not sure I buy it. I'm really not sure I buy it. But nonetheless, there are people who are doing it, and yes, there is a certain leveling of the playing field through e-commerce, but you have to understand that most of us who are writing, if we EPUB our own books, we have to, and we want it to be edited, we have to pay for an editor. We have to pay for artwork because nobody buys anything, even online, without there being artwork. We might have to pay for formatting and other things. It's not an easy game to play on your own. And I'm just saying that as an established writer, it would be a huge, huge change in my process. It would demand that I really devote far more time to business and far less time to writing. For those people who are just starting out, it's prohibitively difficult to do. And you don't have the platform.
Print on demand thing has not really done anything, has it?
I'm sorry?
Print on demand,
Print on demand is not a good thing for writers. Print on demand is in many ways it's negative. But somebody's supposed to be in here now? I guess it's costume prejudging in here.
It's not supposed to start for half.
Oh, and that's not even in here. It's not in here. Print on demand has become something that publishers. When my Ron Tobin books went out of print, when Tor basically said we're not going to print any more of these, the rights revert to me. We go to Tor, my agent does, and she says, you've announced that this book is out of print. According to the contract, the rights now belong to David. Please sign this letter acknowledging that you no longer have the rights. Then when the rights revert to me, I can go ahead and I can sell it to another publisher, or I can sell it myself through EPUB or whatever. I have the rights to do something. Well, with print on demand, theoretically, a book never goes out of print. The store can say, oh, it's not out of print, we're just waiting for orders. As soon as people order it, we're going to print them.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden, that reversion clause becomes irrelevant. Reversion clauses are very important to writers because ultimately, without them, when we With print on demand, without reversion, when I sign my book over to a publisher, I'm signing it away for the rest of my life if there's no reversion. And that's really problematic because writers make money off of reselling old reverted books.
Okay, so that's something you want to keep out of your contract that you have with them?
No, you don't want to keep it out because in signing a contract, you're giving them the rights. So you have to have some kind of reversion clause in there so you can get the rights back. The thing is, you have to find a way, what they need to do is create print-on-demand thresholds. So that you're saying, if you're not selling more than 500 copies of my book a year through print-on-demand, it is de facto out of print and I get the rights back. All right?
Okay.
When you say print on demand, does that include like Lulu.com, or are we referring to publishing houses only?
What is Lulu.com?
Lulu.com. It's basically an online publishing based on you upload a manuscript and you can order as many copies printed as you want.
Okay, so it's self-publishing.
Yeah, it's a self-publishing.
Yeah, so that's self-publishing. And it is print on demand in that but I'm talking about print on demand in a different way. Print on demand in that way, I mean, it's fun. The problem with self-publishing is even in this world of e-commerce, when you self-publish, you attach a stigma to yourself in the eyes of the major publishing houses. If your goal is to get a book out there and see if you can publish it yourself and make some money off of it and you just want to have a book, self-publishing is a great way to go. If your goal is to start out as an e-publisher but eventually be published by a major house, you are hurting yourself by self-publishing. Because what you're saying with it is, I don't believe my book is good enough to get through a vetted process. I'm just going to publish it myself. And so, to this day, publishers remain shy of self-published authors because they feel that they haven't gone through a process that judges the quality of their books. Okay, when I say vetted, when you sell a book to a publisher, an editor has looked at it and said, yes, this is good. We can make it better by editing it, but this is good enough that I think it can make our company money. Self-pub books never go through that because self-publishing companies make their money when you pay them to print it. They have no interest in worrying about the quality of the book, they just want to print the book. And so there is a legitimacy involved in going through that vetting process that works to a writer's benefit because it establishes you as a writer who has been deemed professional in the quality of your work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's our time.
Huh?
That's our time.
Okay, is there any reason why we have to stop? Okay, all
I
right.
don't think there's anything in here for a while, so if
Yeah,
y'all
according
are.
to the schedule.
Yeah, there's, on the schedule, there's nothing, anybody, if I'm boring you,
No,
Just
if
to
y'all
see
wanna
what-
continue, I just
I
wanted to
have
let
just
you
a-
know.
yeah, sure.
You have
Question,
to
a very quick answer. You mentioned for meeting agents, DragonCon, WorldCon, and
World Fantasy Convention.
World Fantasy.
Those last two are traveling conventions, aren't they? WorldCon.
Yes, WorldCon and World Fantasy, they're like the Olympics, they go to different cities at different times. So this year, World Fantasy is in San Diego and WorldCon, and that's in October, late October. It always coincides with Halloween. Takes my kids off every year. WorldCon itself is in Reno in late August, I believe.
That sounds right, but I'm not sure. Never been to one.
World Fantasy is a very professionally oriented convention. It caps its membership usually at around 1,000, 1,200. This year it's capped at 800. It is attended by professional writers, editors, and agents who spend all their time in the bar doing business and talking shop. WorldCon is more along the lines of DragonCon in that it's a fan-oriented convention. It's run by fans. It has lots of programming that's geared toward fans, be it media or books and stuff like that. They have a costume contest, they have all sorts of stuff. World Fantasy feels much more like a professional academic conference. That said, it's my favorite convention because I go every year and I get to hang out with my writing buddies and talk shop in the bar for hours and hours and hours. It's wonderful.
Okay, tell me what I should have if I want to go to a convention and I'm gonna go to the writer's track and I'm going to present myself to, what do I wanna carry with me in my suitcase, in my bag?
Business cards
That's it?
that say who you are and that you're a writer and that have your email address and website and blog, if you have those things, and perhaps a phone number. You want to dress and comport yourself professionally. You don't need to be carrying a manuscript, because if you're going around trying to shove your manuscript under people's noses, you're
That's
going to alienate.
obnoxious, right?
Yeah, you're going to alienate people. You should have a notepad and calendar so that you can keep track of what you're going to do, and who you're going to talk to, and who you have just talked to. Hey there. Yeah, find out what's supposed to be in here, and if we need to leave, we'll leave. And I guess the biggest thing to have is just the attitude of, I am going to put myself out there. I'm not going to be obnoxious. I'm not going to interrupt people's lunches or, chase people into the bathrooms. Sounds weird. It happens. People chase editors and agents into the bathroom because they think that's their opportunity to talk to them. But you want to be able to just approach people and say, hi, I really enjoyed your comments, or I love this book that you edited, or I really love your authors, if you're talking to an agent. I have a book that I've worked on that's complete now that I'm interested in pitching. Do you have some time to talk? Or if you're not ready to do that, then just say, I'm an aspiring writer, I'm working on my first novel. Do you have time to talk to me, or can I take your email address or give you my card? And maybe I can ask you a couple of questions or something. But you have to be able to schmooze.
They can just look for somebody. They can't find somebody, so they keep looking.
Oh, somebody. They
You're not
found me.
Linda. You're not Linda, though.
No, not Linda. Linda from Australia?
Yes.
I wish I was Linda, I love her also.
Yes.
Anyway, I don't want to keep you folks longer than you want to be kept, but if you have more questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you're interested in the magical words, please stop by the website. If you're interested in the magical words, how to write book, I have copies here. Yeah, I thank you all for coming. And as I say, if you have more questions, I'm happy to sit and answer and talk more.
One more thing.
Yeah.
You told him that worry about your writing and not about your blogging. And I understand what you're saying, and that's good, but if you are doing those things, then somebody that you meet and you give them your business card, they can kind of look you up and see what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah, so make sure
it's
that.
not as bad, it's just that it's
It
not
makes you,
number
right,
one.
it's not bad at all. I mean, the thing I would say about it is, Stephen was asking about building a platform, and basically what I was saying is the best way to make it in the business, and the best way to advertise yourself is to write the best book you can, so that when you finally get it under on the desk of whoever you want to read it, they're going to be struck by the quality of your writing. That's not to say that doing a blog is bad. What I would say is that if you're looking at doing a professional blog, make it a professional blog. Write about your experiences writing, about your convention experiences. Don't badmouth anybody in the industry. Don't write anything that you wouldn't want any stranger to read. If you want to blog about, the really cute thing that your cat did last night with a ball of yarn and a Twizzler, I would suggest maybe putting that on a separate blog that you keep for your friends and not for your professional stuff.
Okay, so he has actually, I guess a lot of people have too, shall you say, personas on the web.
They can. I mean, I happen to, when I blog about anything I want.
Yeah.
And I do that because I actually think that fans of my work like to see a personal side of me.
Yeah.
But then again, I never put the names of my kids online.
Yeah.
I rarely put pictures of my kids on anything but Facebook, because Facebook I at least have some ability to say who is looking at this stuff and who isn't. But I'll vent politically. I'll talk about the latest failures of my beloved Mets. I'll talk about family stuff, but I do it in a way that is, I take care with the writing. I don't leave posts up that have a lot of typos in them. I want everything about it, even if the content is getting personal, I want everything about it to look and feel professional. But the other thing is, if you're blogging for the sake of blogging, and it's getting in the way of your writing,
Right,
that becomes a problem.
Right.
If you're blogging because you love it and you can get the writing done as well, absolutely. You know, do it, because it can't hurt.
right,
But ultimately, the writing has to be the thing.
right.
Ultimately, I started my blog because I wasn't writing and I needed to be doing something, and at least blog was
Well,
a
it's
type
not right.
of writing.
Well, you know, I use it, when I first started, I used it that way too. I blog first thing in the morning because I found that it primed the pump in a way. It got me going. And then when I shifted to my novel, I was already in writing mode.
Oh, that's
At this point, I find that blogging is, except for magical words, which I still really enjoy, the rest of my blog I largely ignore these days because it's just a time sink. It's just something, I'll think of it, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, oh, I haven't posted anything in 4 days, and I really need to, and I don't want to. And then I'll get into it and I'll write something. But what I want to do is I want to write my books. I want to write my
So do you
stories.
ever have a block, writer's block?
Now you stepped in.
Okay,
Prepare yourself for a rant. There is no such thing as writer's block.
Yeah.
Writer's block presupposes that writing ought to look a certain way. And what I mean by that is the writing process should look seamless and effortless. Words should flow from you at all times. Writer's block is when all of a sudden it's not flowing and oh my God. That's writing. Writing is fits and starts. Writing is incredibly difficult. Writing is getting stuck and working things through and going back and erasing and deleting stuff and trying it a second time and having that not work and running into narrative dead ends and having characters do stuff they really weren't supposed to do. That's writing. Writing is a struggle. And so the idea of writer's block presupposes that writing ought to be easy when in fact, writer's block is writing.
part of it, yeah.
And the reason there aren't more than 400 self-supporting novelists is that writing is not easy.
Right. Yeah. If this was easy, everybody would do it because it's really fun.
And almost every time I tell a stranger that I'm working on a novel, they say, so am I, or so is my brother, or
We all know somebody.
Oh, yeah. Everybody knows somebody who's
I
writing.
once did a calculation to try and figure out, what was really going on. It's like, okay, I know, say, roughly 100, 200 people, and I know, X number of writers, and okay, maybe I'm overrepresented because I am a writer, and so let me discount that by half. And average person knows half as many writers. So I was able to calculate the average number of people who want to be professional writers, and it was an astronomically high number.
Yeah, there's a lot of this.
Well, because people think it's easy.
Yeah.
People see the commercials where they show the guy writing the great American novel with a laptop and his feet up and he's writing on a pier overlooking this beautiful lake. It's like, first of all, if he wants to be a writer, he can't afford the goddamn pier on the beautiful lake.
unless he has inherited money.
Right. The other thing I'd say, you asked before what you should bring to a convention. You should bring a pitch. You should know how you're going to pitch your book. You should have, if you're ready, if you're at that stage. I said before, Thief Taker by my upcoming series. It's Harry Dresden meets Samuel Adams. That's a
Okay.
5-second pitch.
A word.
You
not
should
a
be able,
sentence.
right, you should be able to pitch, and this is an exercise that I recommend to people all the time. Go to a blank document on your computer, or if you write longhand, do it that way, and write what your book's about. Chances are what you'll end up with is something that's around 500 words. Then rewrite it at 250 words.
Yeah.
Then rewrite it at 100 words. Then rewrite it at 50, and then rewrite it in a single sentence. All right? And what you'll end up with if you do that is a 10-second pitch for in the elevator, a 2-minute pitch for when they say, oh, that sounds interesting, tell me more. And a 5-minute pitch when somebody says to you, oh, that sounds really interesting, tell me more about the characters and stuff like that. But if you do all those things, you end up with a series of ever larger pitches for your book. And of course, the one you want to use first is the one that you write last.
Right.
The one you want to use first is that tiny little one that's 1 sentence long. And the one you want to use last is the one that you wrote first that was 500 words and rambling and everything. But by that point, they've got 3 beers in them and they're interested in hearing what you have to say. But it's a terrific exercise. And before you go to a convention, if you're ready to pitch your book, that's something you ought to be doing, is working on that pitch. Anyway, the other thing that I should say before I let you go is everything I said in this panel might be wrong. All right? There's no right way to do any of this, and I could be full of crap. So the next writer who comes in here to do a panel on the business realities of running might say stuff that's totally at odds with mine, and it's not that either of us is wrong, it's just that there are so many different ways to go about this. I don't have all the answers, but this is what's worked for me.
From the first year that I attended Village Writers Group meetings where we have an author usually, or sometimes an editor or even an agent, come and speak to us is that, and this is not the novel critique group, these are the monthly meetings, is that everybody's path to publication is different.
Yep. Everybody will tell you cannot sell a novel on a first novel, if you're an aspiring writer, you cannot sell a novel on 5 chapters and an outline. I did that. Everybody will tell you that if you're trying to sell a novel from the slush pile, you are screwed. It's never going to happen. Faith Hunter did that. And everybody will tell you can't self-publish and then become a really successful writer. Christopher Paolini did that. It's all, there are exceptions to every rule. There are, as you say, there are as many paths to success as there are writers who are succeeding. So, anyway, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And if you're interested in the Magical Words book, I got it over here.